Welcome on day 6 of the Research Awareness Campaign, the perspective of tomorrow's science. For many people around the world, open science is a difficult subject to understand, but after today, this will not be the case anymore. My name is Wasim, a PhD candidate in immuno-oncology, and together with my colleague Jana, we have the honor to interview the great professor in open science, Jean-Claude Burgelman.
My name is Jana Kotej. I'm a third-year medical student from Lebanon, and I'm an eager advocate for access to research and research education. And I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Could you please introduce yourself to our IFMSA members and everyone else following along?
Okay, so very nice to meet all of you. I'm Jean-Claude Burgelman. I am, for the moment, I am Professor of Open Science Policy at the Free University of Brussels. I've spent, before that, 10 years of my professional life at the European Commission, where I was the last 10 years in charge of all the open access, open data, open science, and the science cloud policies of the European Commission. So my background is in social sciences, and I've been most of my life working on digital technologies and science.
We are very honored to have you with us. So my first question to you is, when did your passion about open science begin? Like, what made you so passionate about it?
Well, you know, it is, of course, in retrospect, everything is logical. Huh? But if you reconstruct and you're honest, you're more or less getting into this by accident. And the reason why I got so passionate about open science is that the first 10 years I spent it in the European Commission, I was head of a big research center on the impact of digital technologies on the economy, on the industry, on social relations, and so forth. And we were doing a lot of work on how digital technologies and the globalization of the world changed the way, for example, the economy was being done. And this was the beginning of electronic commerce. Maybe some of you don't know it, but before you ordered stuff on the internet, you went to a shop, you know. So those things we were looking at closely, and that was around the turn of the century, 2005. And the last parts of the work we were looking into it was how digital technologies, so the internet, but also the way you can set up collaborative work streams, how you can do research. So how these technologies were affecting science. We were starting to study around 2000, and 2010, and when we brought together the whole picture of what was changing and what the impact was, the conclusion was very quickly made that, well, this will become open science will become as important as e-commerce. So the change and the impact that we have witnessed in the rest of society, given what was happening in science, and that was the beginning of data science, it was the beginning of ResearchGate, it was the beginning of Academia EU, of all these new things, 2012, I'm speaking now. Well, given all that, we made the assumption that this was most likely to be something as important as anything else that happened in our societies. And in particular, your fields as medical people, or as bio people, in particular your field was one of the precursors of open science, although no one called it that way. And I'm referring here to the Human Genome Project. And the way the Human Genome Project is being done by openly available, making the results of the sequencing, and in doing so, setting up international collaborative teams that, because everything is openly available, they go on and make even more discoveries, plus the effect it has on creating startups. Well, no one called it open science, but that is what it is. And so those things, if you put it together, very quickly led us to the conclusion that, well, this is the new paradigm of science in the 21st century.
Okay, so and what do you think of when you hear the term open science? What does open science mean to you?
Well, open science, the way I always say it's a new modus operandi of science. It's a new way of doing science, and it has impact on all the stakeholders. So let me break it down, if you want, in those two components. The way you do science, if you go back before the days of the internet, if you go back before the days of big repositories, if you go back before the days of collaborative tools, of open lab books and so forth, the way science was done was mainly, well, I'm exaggerating now, manual in a closed setting and reinventing all the time the things. Now, today, and the coronavirus research, the way your field, your community has tackled the challenge of the corona vaccine, well, what you see happening now is that you get in real time the production of the results in formats that a majority of the scientific medical community can reuse. Most of the publications, and there are 450 articles published per day on the corona. Most of them are made openly available, so no paywalls, no 2 years waiting, no extra pay to consult it. Well, that is the modus operandi that has changed, that is changing, that we call open science. And it has impacts, of course, on the way you work as a researcher, on the way how you fund open science research, and that's what we did in the commission. We are asking for open data, on the way that you have to set up open repositories where you have to standardize the metadata. So for the data policy, you have to find a common language. For the data policy, you have a common approach and so forth. So it is a modus operandi change, a new way of doing things, affecting the whole ecosystem, researchers, universities, publishers of science.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So some of the main elements of open science are open and fair data, open access, and next generation metrics. So what do you believe are the most important benefits of supporting these open science elements?
Yes, well, so first of all, and maybe we come back to it, open doesn't mean free. It's not because something is open that you cannot patent it at the end of the day. And by the way, you have excellent, in your field, again, you have excellent examples like the Cambridge Genomics project, which is completely open science, but a combination of public-private, but at the end of the day, you can still develop your patents for whatever you discover. Coronavirus, idem. Although the data are openly available, the knowledge is openly available immediately, it doesn't stop the big companies to patent the results, which is, by the way, one of the problems of the vaccine strategy globally these days, but that's another discussion. So if I go back to your question, so what are the main components? That's what you said, and the main challenges, huh?
The most important benefits of supporting the open science elements.
Yeah, sorry, excuse me. Sorry. So the most important benefits, the benefits are different according to who of the ecosystem of research you speak to. If you look at it from the point of view of a funder, so if I fund, in Europe, we invest on a yearly basis 120 billion per year of research via publicly funded means. So the Commission, the national public authorities, and so on. Until recently, most of this was never ever reusable because the standards were not there, the repositories were not there, the metadata were not there. So from a funder point of view, making the results of what you fund reusable is in itself an immense benefit. Because the reusability means that maybe you or someone else or someone in the south of Europe or in the south of the world will pick up your data, and without having to finance again the whole process to go to the data, can start immediately doing the number crunching, doing the analysis, doing the intelligence. So it is what I always said, it is an enormous gain in return of investment for a funder. Okay. The second gain is it is an enormous benefit for innovation. In Europe, we have 22 million, sorry, I always use European examples because that's what I know best. Huh? So in Europe, we have 22 million SMEs, small and medium enterprises. In a system where they have to pay for access to knowledge and access to data, the likelihood that they will, as an SME, what do you need? You need money because you need to build up your enterprise. So why would you put it in huge, expensive databases? No. So if you make the knowledge, which is publicly funded, openly available for the SME system, the likelihood that something will get out of it is much bigger than when it is not. It's logical. If you have 22 million SMEs, if 10% of them, or 1% of them, let's state it more sharply, will reuse, will access the reusable knowledge or the open knowledge, and if 1% of that 1% starts a new company, that becomes the new Google. Well, you have created an enormous effect with actually zero extra investment because it was already there. And then thirdly, very importantly, and by the way, the Human Gnome project is an example of it. It has been calculated that it has created up to 4 million jobs if you take the whole cycle together because of the accessibility to the open knowledge and people starting in an SME or a startup or whatever on that basis. So better return of investment for the funder, better take up by the innovation system. But finally, for a researcher, it has an enormous effect, a beneficiary effect. What do you want as a researcher? You want impact, no? You also want money, but you first of all, you want impact. You want your research to make sense. Now, it has been demonstrated that open access articles, so if you make the results of your research immediately available so that no one else has to pay for it, so that those articles get quoted 3 to 4 times more than a normal article. It has been shown that open data are, when your article is linked to the open data, the reuse of it increases with a factor X. So by making your research, the results of your research openly available, as a researcher, you have a much bigger impact, which is very good for your scientific career, but which is of course good for your internal drive as a scientist. You want to have, if you don't want to have impact, why would you be in science? And then you better sell cars. So it has beneficiaries for the whole system. And that is of course why I say that open science is unstoppable. Because of these 3 elements together, it will become the default way of doing science in the 21st century.
Yeah, and in this case, why are people scared to publish non-result or negative data? Are they scared it might damage their reputation, or what do you think in that matter?
Well, I think, first of all, I don't think people are per se scared, but first of all, you don't have many opportunities to publish it. Huh? A negative result being published in Nature is very unlikely, or in the Lancet, to talk the top journal in your field. So why would you do the effort? Although it is completely nonsensical, it is because all the negative results lead to the positive insight. Right? That's the logic of science. Because if every research piece would immediately always lead to a positive result, we would have enormous progress in science. So we need the negative results to make progress, but the publication system is not rewarding it. You don't get an article, not easily an article, because of if you do that, and then if there is this psychological barrier that, imagine that I have 100 articles or 10, and 9 of them are negative results, well, then most likely the community will say, well, that guy is useless because he's only publishing negative results. Whereas we all know that 90% of what we do is negative results.
Yes, and in the light of the previous question, where do you see the boundaries of openness?
I don't think there is that. I don't think per se there are boundaries. On the contrary, I think, and again, coronavirus has illustrated it very, very painfully. A lot of the big challenges in our world and in our century are asking for collaborative approaches on a global scale. The virus is global. Climate change is global. Migration is, just to take a social science topic, is a global problem. So we will need more and more actually of open global open data to be able to tackle the global challenges of our society. So the boundaries are not intellectual. On the contrary, the boundaries are mainly in fair data. We need urgently to mobilize everyone to go as fast as possible for a system whereby research data in general and data in particular are findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. Without that, we will never have the benefits of global open science. And it's not only it's not only the results of public research, but if we take your field, I mean, why was the scientific world so successful in managing corona? Is because not only the vaccine development was being done in an open science way, but also the monitoring of the viruses, the monitoring of the infections, the monitoring of the results and of the people were, first of all, were possible because of the internet, but secondly, were possible because of people were able to exchange it. 50 years ago, we would have not known how things would be going. We would have no clue what is happening in India or only fragmentary. So the models would not be there because there were simply no data. And if the data were there, they were simply not findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So it's a long answer to come to the conclusion that the key bottleneck, the key boundary, sorry, not bottleneck, the key boundary is fair data.
Yes, and we are talking about open science, and we keep repeating the same words. Do you think science is already open, or do we need more openness? And if we need more openness, where should it be?
Well, you know, open is a word that has connotations of being good, and you know, open is better as closed. Intuitively, that's what you think. So for me, openness is not a moral starting point. So although I have my own views on the moral responsibility of science. So for example, I think there should be no patent on the vaccines now. That is hindering the global strategy, and that's a moral conviction. And you can label that open, and that's a little bit where the confusion starts. But for me, open science is science that is interoperable, that is reusable, and so forth. That is what open means. And that is what is important. The rest are benefits, and the rest is possible because your data are being open and are being shared. So for example, the global vaccination strategies, but it is not a precondition. And you can have perfectly fair data in a closed science system.
Yes, yes. And so like with everything we have today from technology and artificial intelligence, what do you think is still needed for open science to work?
What is needed is the following, and allow me to make a little bit of a long introduction.
Yes.
So all science will be data-driven. Why? Because everything will become data. We will, well, you know, even in my body in 20 years time, well, already they have implants. Most likely I will have wearable t-shirts with sensors to measure what is going on in my body. I have it now on my iWatch. In 20 years, I might have it in my t-shirt. So everything I do, every mobility, every trajectory I do is being recorded via my car, via my phone, via my God knows what. So every action we take as a being, but also as an ecosystem, will become traceable because it will become a data point. As a result of that, so that's what I call the big datafication of science. So all sciences will increasingly be able to rely on massive amounts of data. Why? Because the data will be there. Now, it is impossible for the human brain or for a single person to make sense out of all these billions of teraflops of data being produced on a daily basis almost. So what we need is more artificial intelligence, because we need algorithms to make sense out of it. We will go, therefore, in such a scenario, we will go towards, that's my view, that's my personal view. I cannot prove it because the future still has to happen. But my guess is that the more and more machines read AI will do bits and pieces, and increasingly more significant the more intelligent the AI becomes. They will do bits and pieces of our scientific work. Big chunks of the number crunching will be done by software. And a lot of what we or you as a scientist will do is take the results of that machine-driven science production, which will be data sets, and make sense out of it. So that's a long answer to your question.
We actually enjoy it. So we're gonna go a little bit personally. So are there any open science projects that come to your mind spontaneously right now?
Oh, you know, there is so much going on. There are
like choose your favorite ones.
Well, I think my favorite one is the one no one calls open science, which is the search for a vaccine for corona, because it demonstrates, well, it is public and private working together. It is global. It is working across political boundaries. It is done in real time, and it has led to what I think is scientifically one of the biggest successes in our history. Is not going to Mars and putting someone on Mars. It is developing a vaccine in a period of time which is, what is it, 90% faster than normally. So it's half of a miracle that the system was able to produce a vaccine in 12 months. Not one, but several. So is that my favorite project? It is certainly the one I use most to try to convince people that we should do more for open science.
I totally agree. So now I'll give the floor for Wasim.
Thank you, Jana.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yes. So my questions are, what has the internet changed about science and working in research? I think you also already answered the question a bit, but maybe just the highlights of your answer.
Well, you know, it has changed everything. So what is the life cycle of research? The life cycle of research is, first of all, you need someone to pay your salary. In Wasim, as a PhD candidate, you know that without that, you don't make any research. So then you need a good question. So after your question, you need to find data. After your data, you need to make sense out of it. When that is done, you have to write it up. you have to defend it, you have to publish it, and then 4 years later, you're a doctor in something. Now, every stage of that life cycle of research has been enormously impacted by the internet and by digital technologies. In my days, I'm from the previous century. Yeah? If I had to find out what is the state of research the state of the art of knowledge in a certain field, I had to go to a library. I had to go to write letters. So I witnessed the first computer, by the way. So it took me months to find out on that particular topic, what is the state of the art of knowledge. Now, you guys, and this is fantastic, you should use it maximum, you can find it in a week. In a week's time, and if you're lucky, with a good search engine and with posting the right questions in Academia EU or in ResearchGate or in Mendeley, you find it within a week, more or less, what is the state of the art of the knowledge. A week later, you have your bibliography, and with some text and data mining, 3 months later, you made up your mind, so to speak. You will be able to find your data. You will not have to go to limit your research because of the lack of data. It will be the opposite. You will be able to bring in colleagues from around the world to act as a peer for your work. You will be able to collaborate across the globe without having to send stuff around and wait for months and then things get lost. You will be able to publish tomorrow if you want. You don't have, in my days, the publication time was 2 years between my article finished and the publishing of the article. Now, you can publish now with a peer review article, a preprint you can publish tomorrow, a peer review article, 2 to 6 months and it is published. You can have immediately the whole world reading it, commenting it, annotating it, and so forth. So it is not it looks a marginal change, but if you put it in the history of how we did science, it is a fundamental change. That's why I said in the beginning, it's like e-commerce, you know, and it is as deep, the change.
Okay, thank you. So what do you think are the most important motivations for sharing research data and publications openly?
Yes. That is a question I was thinking of. I must absolutely say something about it. So first of all, one element we tackled already. Jana, when she asked it, so this is, you want to have impact. If the average book, if you take social sciences, the average amount of books that people buy of a social science title, whatever title, is between 300 and 400 copies, I think. There are exceptions like Yuval Harari, who sells millions, but these are absolute exceptions. The average downloaded book, which is openly in open access available, is in the thousands. So even as a history, and you know, the University of College of London is pioneering with they have their own platform for open access books. So they have, in 4 years' time, they realized 4 million downloads. This is absolutely unthinkable in a closed, in a system whereby you have to pay 30, 40, 50 euros for a book. So for me, even if I write about the history of the Middle Ages in South Belgium, just inventing something, I will have much more readers if I publish it openly. So even in those disciplines, open access gives me much more impact. So that's one element. But the second element is, of course, why, and that is for the moment not enough developed. If a researcher these days is mainly awarded in an academic context for the number of articles he publishes in high impact journals. And that is, I think, not something that has to change. If science is a data-driven business whereby the production of data sets in fair formats is almost as important as the article, we should somewhere in the evaluation of a scientist have an indicator for that. To give you an example, if my article is read by 5 people because I am not a good article writer or whatever, but my data set, which is fair and is available, is downloaded 5,000 times for reuse by colleagues like you, am I a bad scientist? No. So why is this not rewarded? So we need to reward open science, and that is together with having an impact. Once these two will be in place, will be a huge stimulus for scientists to apply whatever is needed to make knowledge openly available.
Okay, thank you for your answer. It's really interesting indeed. So my next question is, how open is your research? Is there anything you do open? And are there other parts of your research that you say, this part I'm doing it disclosed, or not so open?
Well, I mean, first of all, the last X years, the last 10 years, I refuse to publish anything that is not openly accessible. But you must also be honest, in my field, I mean, you know, there is not really a big market for patents either. Huh? So why wouldn't I do it? So almost everything of what we do is openly available. And with regard to publications, I personally think everyone should, for the reasons I just said, it has a bigger impact, should go for open access. One of the, so just to give you an example, one of the things that has the most impact, one of the things that I did that has had the most impact was a report we published in 2005 in the European Commission together with a team of people on the future of alien intelligence. So it is not even, it was not even, well, it was peer reviewed within the institute, but it has never been published in a peer review journal. But it has been downloaded thousands of times all over the world. It has been cited enormously. And that is something in the classical impact measurement system doesn't appear. So just to say well, I'm deviating now from your question. So I try to systematically go for open access, and whatever I want to do private, I do private, but that is mainly because the companies not force me, but ask for it. But that happened before as well. You know, I always said that what was closed before will be closed after today, but the rest can be open and can be shared.
Mm-hmm. Well, this brings me to the next question, because I wanted to ask you, at what times must we consider not sharing research data and publications openly?
Well, you know, in the European Commission, we always said as open as possible, as closed as needed, which means that for health, for patent reasons, for IP reasons, intellectual property reasons, for privacy reasons, and your field, health, is quite sensitive for it, and for military reasons, it is quite logical that open does not exist because you want to shield it off for all these different reasons. That doesn't mean it should not be fair. Huh? As I said in the discussion with Jana, it can be open without having, it can be fair without being open, without being accessible to everyone. But within the closed boundary, it can be accessible. Huh? So that is, I think, something we have to accept. And you know, again, open science is not an ideology. It's about maximizing the effects of science. And whatever needs to be closed because of privacy, IP, or military reasons, well, will stay closed. It was 50 years ago like that, and it will be like that in 50 years in the future as well. Huh? So there is no problem there. It's not absolute. It's not an absolute category. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So you as an expert in the field, what online tools do you use for your for research, or what tools do you know that you can share with our students worldwide that can be very handy for them?
Well, you know, I invite you to, if you want, I can send you the link later on. So, but there are two librarians in Utrecht who have a blog on the LSE, the London School of Economics, where they systematically keep track of all the open science tools that you need for the whole life cycle of research and which are free to use. So it is called 101 Innovations in Scholarly Communication. And they know much better than me all the tools, and you can find a very nice overview there of what you can use. But then, of course, a lot is also discipline specific. You have generic tools, but you have also discipline specific tools, which I don't know anything about it. I mean, in your field, okay, the generic tool is open notebooks, but what is in your field the best application? I have no clue. So that there, I think you have to look in well, I'm sure you will find this on the internet. Huh?
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Then, as a professor, I'm sure you have a lot of things to do. So again, thank you for being here. But how do you organize your ideas? Do you do that on paper, or do you use like digital tools to do your managing?
I start everything. You mean my ideas for science?
Yeah, in general, like your lifestyle, everything.
Well, you know, professionally, when I start everything with a mind map. So it is a very simple tool. I have an electronic version, and a mind map allows me to, well, to map to map what I'm thinking and to see the contradictions. And you know, and I have a big screen because I'm now looking at the big screen, and then you see how chaotic things become, and then you have to try to make a sense out of it. So mind mapping and then linking behind the map, the data sets and so forth is my starting point for everything. And in the old days, in the days when the animals could speak, I did it on paper. So I had big papers on my walls and I made drawings. That's my way of visualizing what I'm thinking.
All right. Yeah, I might try it.
No, it is no. And the second thing I do a lot is, if I don't see the order anymore, I go for a run in the fields, and then the mind map together with the oxygen makes the solution.
All right, great advice. Thank you.
All three.
All three, exactly. So then I wanted to ask you about collaborative writing. We were talking about it a bit earlier, but do you write with other people? And if you do so, how does it work, like collaborative writing on specific papers or?
Oh yes, I did. I think for the last 20 years, I did not publish one article alone. I am a big fan of collaborative writing because two know more than one, three know more than two, you know, and if you work in team, and most of what science is doing is teamwork anyway. So as you can as well try to make it collaborative. Now, the trick of collaborative writing is that you need a good central idea. You need to know where you want to get, because otherwise it goes in all directions. But as soon as you have the structure via the mind map, you go running, you know what you want to do, then it is relatively easy to, you know, someone makes the line, and then other people do bits and pieces, and then there is always someone that needs to start it and someone who needs to wrap it up and make it consistent. But it's fun because you can be much more productive.
Exactly, as long as everything is organized, and indeed, when you know where you want to go, then indeed it's indeed a very great tool.
You need to know where to go, otherwise it goes everywhere. And of course, you need to pay duly respect to all contributors. In my days in the commission as a civil servant, I wrote articles for other people because I was paid for that. That was so that was also collaborative writing, but not visible.
Okay, okay, great. But how does it exactly work? Because, like, for example, you start writing on something, you have your document, and then you share it with all the your co-authors, or how does it exactly work?
Well, it depends. You know, we used Open Docs or Google Docs or whatever system, and then people can come in and so forth. But what you have to avoid is that it becomes a cacophony of people contributing. So you need to agree on this is what we want to develop together. And once you have it, then it works. And you have several versions. And at the end, you make someone has to take the final responsibility. Otherwise, you never get to a decision.
All right. So we also talked about the corona vaccine and stuff. And as you know, the higher incoming countries are doing pretty well in terms of COVID vaccinations, but there are also lower incoming countries that are truly in desperate shape. And speaking about open science and considering the fact we are in an emergency situation, wouldn't it be helpful to lift up the vaccine patent protection in order to increase access? I know you already said that you should, but how would it exactly work if we would?
Well, I think first of all, I'm not a medical expert in immunology and in vaccinology or whatsoever. So I'm only an amateur observer, so to speak. But it is, in my view, crystal clear that given the scale of the challenge, given that we will only have a corona-free world when the whole world is vaccinated and not the rich part of it, given the problems of production of the production of vaccines, which are clearly not in line with where it is also needed, meaning in low-income countries, the simplest way to speed up production and vaccination is by allowing a temporary lift of the IP, so that low-income countries can set up their own production capacities or can set up their own factories. That's logical, huh? And I don't see why not. I mean, if we could say, well, for 2 years' time we will lift we will lift the IP, and then in the 3rd year we will take it back. So there is no scandal there. It's not stealing it away. It will go back to where it belongs. So what is the problem? You know, it's a little bit like generic medicine. Huh? It's a very generic approach, medicine approach to the vaccine, but it is mainly inspired by, you know, it is also even self-interest. We will not be able to travel if the whole world is not virus-free. So even from a self-interest point of view, we need it. So I only see a win-win there.
Exactly. Thank you. So we've talked about many things, but there are still a thing I would like to know. So what do you consider the most incentive to promote open science? And it's also, I think, important for all the students that are following us. What advice could you give them?
Well, the biggest incentive is you want to change the world, no? You want to have an impact. Even if it is a little piece of the world or it's a big piece, doesn't matter. You want, that's why you study. Why would you bother making a PhD? So from that point of view, if you want your work and your research to be the maximum potential of impact, that's the key driver for open science. That's what should drive you. Secondly, as we said, universities, research funders should grant you, they should reward you for open science. If you do the effort to publish in open access, you should get an extra bonus. If you do the effort for fair data, to make your data sets reproducible, it should be translated in your career evaluation. It should be considered as much science as publishing a top journal article.
Okay, great. Thank you. So is there anything you would want to say that I did not ask you about, or anything that is missing in this conversation about open science, why you think this is an important point?
You know, I think, well, we touched about many things, and I think a lot has been said. And one of the arguments that I used a lot inside the discussions that I was involved in Europe and in the G7 and so on is that people underestimate how fast digital technologies take over a part of the world. In this case, it is science. And we are consistently underestimating the speed of change. And the example I used a lot there is, if you take the top 20 internet companies of today, Facebook, Google, Amazon, and what have you, which we think are part of our natural ecosystem almost, well, 20 years ago, they didn't exist. I think the same will happen in science. I think if the three of us sit together in 10 years' time and we look back to what we said today, we will probably say, why are you talking about? I mean, it is self-evident what you have said. And I'm quite sure that we will go to a situation where the speed of change will be much faster than we think.
Yeah, thank you. And as last, what advice would you like to share with all the future physicians and researchers worldwide?
Well, try to do something which makes a better world. You only have one life, and open science will help you.
All right, great. All right, so this our interview comes to an end. We really want to thank you for your presence and taking the time for doing this interview with us, because it means a lot. And yeah, this will be shared on for our research awareness campaign as a part of day 6. So thank you very much for this interview. I don't know, Jana, if you still want to say something.
I want to say thank you so much. It was very eye-opening and very motivational. Thank you.
Okay, well, you're the next generation. You have to do it.
Exactly.
Hopefully we will.
You have to. By the way, will you let me know when it goes public? So I will then tweet it and refer to a very pleasant conversation with.
Yes, of course.
That would be wonderful.
Are you also
Thank you.
in Belgium, Jana?
What?
Are you also based in Belgium, Jana?
No, I'm in Lebanon.
You're in Lebanon. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I heard that you were from Lebanon, but I thought you were based in Belgium.
Oh no, I'm from Lebanon.
Okay.
So it's actually a big project. Like, we were working with all medical students worldwide, and we want to make that campaign, go virally on the whole world, so that people are aware about science and the importance of science and open science and everything. So yeah, it's quite a big project, and it's fun to work and collaborate with a lot of.
It's really nice, and it was a nice discussion. So thank you for the discussion, and good luck with everything, and keep me informed. Okay.
We will do, for sure. Thank you, Professor Burgelman.
All the best. Good luck to you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay.
All right.